Hey guys, it's Maddie, and today I will be doing my February wrap-up. So February was an okay month overall. I read a total of 7 books, which is great. Not as much as I have been reading in a month lately, but February is a short month, so it's kind of expected that I'm going to read less than usual. The beginning of the month was going so well, and then within the last week or two of February, I got into a reading slump. I'm still kind of in it, and I'm trying to get out of it. It's just because I've been reading so much lately that I've gotten burned out of reading. So it's very unfortunate, but hopefully this slump won't last long. And March will be a great reading month, even though I am still in this slump. Well, let's just get into the stats. As I said, I read 7 books in February, and I read a total of 2,108 pages. I read 1 2009 release, 1 2010 release, 2 2012 releases, 1 2013, 1 2015, and 1 2017, so a very broad range of years right there. The oldest one I read was in 2009, so a lot of them were pretty recent. The genres I read this month is really funny. So I read 3 paranormal books and 4 contemporary books. So all the genres I read this month were either paranormal or contemporary books. I don't know what's up with me, but I've just been reading way more paranormal books than usual. I'm just getting into the genre more, I guess. I also wanted to change something up with my stats and include if I read any graphic novels or manga, since I think those two should have their own category. I read 1 graphic novel in February and 1 manga. 4 of the books I read in February were checked out from the library. 2 of them I owned, and 1 was an audiobook. So I read mostly books from the library in February, and I listened to an audiobook for once, and I'm not someone who listens to audiobooks frequently, so this month was a change. I read all female authors except for 1 male author. 4 of the books were a part of a series, and 3 of them were standalone. I reread 1 book this month. All the books I read were YA. As for my ratings, they were all 4 and 5-star reads, so content-wise, really great reading month. I had 3 4 stars and 4 5 stars. I DNF'd 5 books this month. That is so bad. However, I only planned to not get back into 1 of them. But the rest of them I do plan to get back to. I just either couldn't finish them in February because I ran out of time, or I was in a slump and they were the books that were causing me to be in a slump, so I wasn't getting into them. So for the most part, I'm going to get back to a lot of these books except for 1, which I DNF'd. I don't want to get back into it. Out of the 19 books on my February TBR, what was I thinking putting 19 books on a TBR? I don't know. It was ambitious. I read 6 of them, so I mean, I didn't expect to read all 19 books. Like, I knew that wasn't going to be possible, but at least I did get to 6 of them. So first, I'll share with you the books that I did DNF this month before we go into the ones I actually did read. So this first one is the one that I don't plan on getting back to because I just lost interest in it. That is I'll Give You the Sun by Jenny Nelson. I got to page, I want to say like 160 or 70, and I kept thinking like, this is going to get better, even though I'm not liking it, and it just wasn't. I found like I wasn't getting the point of this book. This book is supposed to be about 2 twin siblings who have grown apart, and you're trying to figure out throughout this book why they grew apart, but from what I was reading, I couldn't understand why they had grown apart because it felt like throughout this book they were getting along. I guess I just wasn't getting the point of it, and I just lost interest. Like, it just wasn't keeping my interest. So I'm going to end up unhauling this book, unfortunately, even though I really wanted to love it because it sounded really good. It's just the payoff of it just wasn't great for me. So this one will be going. So next I have You by Caroline Kepnes. This one, I'm so sad I didn't love this one as much as I thought I would. I got to page 100, I want to say, around there. And I was reading this during the time when I was in a slump, and I think I was only not into it because I was in a slump. So I actually do want to get back to this one, even though I said in my vlog while I was reading this that I wasn't into the writing. But really, I think it's just me that's the problem, because I was reading this while I was in a slump, so I feel like I'm not giving the book a fair chance. So I'm going to get back to this book at a later time, and hopefully by the time I do get back to it, I'll be able to get into it more. It's just I read this book at the wrong time for me, so I do want to get back into it. Next, I have The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. Another case of I was in a slump and just wasn't in the mood for this book. I wanted to read this book because I read one of Holly Black's books this month, which I'll get to later, that I really loved. So I want to read more of her books, and this was really good. I just couldn't pay attention because I was in a slump. So another case of I felt like I wasn't giving the book a fair chance. So I will get to this book another time, and actually I want to start it all over again. Even though I got to page 200, I have no idea what's going on in this book because I found it so hard to pay attention because I didn't feel like reading. It's just not giving the book a fair chance. So I will get back to it at a later time, just not right now because I'm unfortunately not in the mood for it. And next, this is the book that I am currently reading, and that is Onyx by Jennifer L. Armentrout, the second book in the Lux series. I ended up reading the first book in this series. Spoiler alert, I'm going to get into the first book when I talk about the books I read this month, but I really liked it. So I wanted to get to Onyx. I'm currently on page 448 of this bind-up, so I'm a little less than halfway through Onyx, and I do plan to continue reading it for sure because I love this series. It's just the one that I'm currently reading, so I wanted to mention it. So with the DNFs out of the way, I'm going to go into the books that I did actually read this month. First, I want to talk about the books that I reread. And the only book that was a reread this month was Every Day by David Levithan. I reread this book in preparation for the adaptation movie that was coming out in February. So it had been a while since I read this, so I wanted to reread it again. And this is the one that I listened to on audiobook, and I love the audiobook to this book. It's really well done, and this was the third time I read this book, and I still love it. It's such a great book, and the movie was amazing. Such a great movie adaptation. I did a movie review on this book, which I will leave linked on the screen in case you want to check that out. But I really enjoyed the movie, and I enjoyed reading the book for a third time. For those of you who don't know, this book is about a person, or I would call him a soul, who changes bodies every day. He's never the same person every day. He ends up meeting this girl and falls in love with her, but the problem is, since he is in a different person's body every day, he can never be with her. So throughout this book, he's trying to find a way to see her again and be with her. It's a very unique love story that I would highly recommend. I talk about it so much on this channel because I love it so much, but really it's one of my favorite books. Okay, now going into the books that aren't rereads, I will be showing you guys these books in order from my least favorite book of the month to my most favorite book of the month, but they were all 4- and 5-star reads, so there was really like no least favorite book that I hated, but these are just in order of my enjoyment of them. So coming in at my least favorite book of the month is Twilight, the graphic novel. I picked this up on a whim at the library because I guess I'm just nostalgic with Twilight. That's the reason I can come up with. So I was interested in this, and I actually did really like it. The artwork is so pretty. The style of it really reminds me of a manga, which I really loved because I love reading manga, so I really liked the artwork in it. So that was like my favorite thing about it. And as well, the story was good. I expected what I was going to get out of it because it's a Twilight graphic novel. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It was really well done, and I think I will continue on with this graphic novel series. I'm really interested to. And next, I have Orange Volume 4 by Ichigo Takano. I wasn't as big of a fan of this volume as I was with the other volumes. The volumes prior to this, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The only reason I didn't love this volume as much is because it involved a sports festival, and sports is just not my thing. Like, sometimes I can enjoy reading about it, but other times, like, I don't feel like reading about it. So that was the case with this one. It just didn't interest me at all, but I still love the characters and I loved the drama and situations they were getting in, and I'm still going to read this manga. I only have 2 more volumes left in the series, so hopefully I'll be able to finish them in March. And as for the summary of this book, this is a manga series about a girl who receives a letter from herself 10 years in the future telling her that something bad is going to happen to her friend and she needs to fix it. So this manga series has to do with time travel, but it's time traveling through letters, which is so cool. And I'm really enjoying the series, and as I said, cannot wait to keep on reading the rest of the volumes. Next I have Here We Are Now by Jasmine Warga. This has been an anticipated release of mine. It came out late last year in 2017, so I had been really wanting to read it. I checked it out from the library, and I really did enjoy this book. I wanted to read this book because I love this author's book, My Heart and Other Black Holes, so I wanted to read this just because I love that book so much, and it was not a disappointment. This book has a really cool concept and plot. It is about a girl who has never met her father before, and she ends up sending a letter to her father asking him to have a relationship with her. So all of a sudden her father knocks on her door and asks her to go on a road trip with him to visit his dad that is dying. The cool thing about her father is that he is a famous rock star. So he's in this really well-known band that is super successful, and I just thought throughout this whole time, like, how cool would it be to find out that your dad is a famous rock star? Like, I was so envious of our main character. I was just like, oh, that is so awesome. So I really enjoyed this book. What I love about it is that it's all about getting to know your family and the relationships that this girl creates with her family that she didn't know before, because she is meeting her dad's side of the family for the first time. And I just loved seeing her get to know her family, form relationships with them. Oh, it was just such a great book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The only little issue I had about it is that I felt like it should have been longer, because it just felt like things were kind of rushed throughout the book and not enough was really put in it. So if it had been like 50 pages longer, I think it would have been a 5-star. But I still really liked it, would really recommend it if you're into contemporary books. It was such a good one. Next I have Stolen by Lucy Christopher. This is a book I had been really wanting to read for so long. I finally got to it because it was in my haul reaction video, so I had to read it within a limited amount of time, or else I needed to unhaul it, and I definitely did not want to unhaul this book because it had always intrigued me. This book is about a girl who gets kidnapped while she's at the airport by this guy, and she's taken to Australia in the middle of the desert, being held captive with this guy. And throughout this book, she gets to know this guy more, kind of finds out that he's not all bad as he seems. Gonna leave it at that because I feel like this is a book you really need to go into without really knowing much about it, since it is kind of like a mystery, sort of a thriller, but more of so just like a dark contemporary book. I really, really liked it. It did not disappoint. One of the topics that this book goes over is Stockholm Syndrome, which is a syndrome I had never heard about before. So it was nice finding out about it through this book. It was very interesting. So the disorder, or the syndrome, not quite sure what to call it. This disorder is the term for someone who falls in love with their captor or like sympathizes with him. So we find the main character throughout this book kind of sympathizing with her captor. So it was just such an interesting plot, and how this girl really started to sympathize with Ty, her captor, and the reader kind of starts to sympathize with him too. I found myself understanding Ty more and sympathizing with him, which really surprised me. That's the thing I really liked about this. It really made me think. So I would really recommend this book, especially for like a dark contemporary. This is such a good one, and I'm so glad I finally got around to reading it. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Next, as I mentioned earlier, I read Obsidian by Jennifer L. Armentrout, the first book in the Lux series. Oh man, did I love this book. I knew I was going to because I love Jennifer L. Armentrout so much, and this is her most popular book in series, I feel like. Oh, it was so great. This book series is about a girl who realizes her next door neighbors are aliens in the form of human bodies, and she gets to know this one guy alien named Damon and builds this kind of relationship with him. And a bunch of chaos action goes on throughout this book. Oh, it is so good. I feel like it's a really big guilty pleasure read because it's not original. It's basically Twilight, but with aliens. That's how I would describe it. But I still really love it. I can't wait to read the rest of the books in this series. Like I said, currently reading Onyx, loving it. I kind of have a feeling it's so far better than Obsidian, so like I just want to keep on reading it. I'm like loving it. So really can't wait to keep on reading the rest of this series. If you are into paranormal books, definitely check this one out. I think it is definitely worth the read. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And lastly, my favorite book I read in February has become, I love this book so much. It's become like an old-time favorite. It like made its way to the top of my favorite books of all time. And the most amazing thing about this is I did not expect to love this book. I actually expected to hate it, but I ended up loving it. So it was such a huge surprise. That is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. I love this book so much. I read this book in 2 days, and this is a 400-page book. It usually takes me about 4 days or longer to read a book this size, but I read it so fast in 2 days, which is really impressive. That never happens because I was so into it. And the reason that it surprised me so much is because this is a book that is very polarizing. A lot of people actually don't like this book, so I was expecting not to like it. I was wrong. I was so wrong. It was so good. This book is a little hard to explain, but I'll explain like what I can get from the gist of it. It's about this world where vampires exist, and vampires have been like an epidemic, and they are infecting people. And when they bite people, they become infected, but they don't become a full vampire until they bite someone. And in this world, throughout a bunch of towns, there are these quarantines where the vampires are kept away from everyone else, and they're called cold towns, and they're set up so that the vampires who are full-on vampires can be separated from humans to prevent further infection. So this book is about a girl named Tana, and she goes to one of these cold towns for reasons that I won't get into. The book takes off from there. Oh, it is so great. It's such a unique spin on the vampire genre. It is very action-packed in the beginning, which really drew me into the story, and that's what made me want to read it more. And then in the middle, it kind of slows down, which I actually didn't mind because there was so much action in the beginning that I felt like a slower pace was needed. And throughout that slow pace of the book, we got to know the characters. We got to fall in love with the characters. My favorite character in this book is Gabriel because he is so swoon-worthy. Love him so much. So I just really love this book. I, of course, gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic. Looking forward to reading more of Holly Black's other books because I really fell in love with her writing in this book. It was so well done. So I really loved it. I know it's an older release, but if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely do. I think it's definitely worth the read, no matter what people say negatively about it. So that was my February wrap-up. Like I said, great reading month, despite the fact that within the last 2 weeks of February I was in a reading slump, but I read a lot of just amazing books this month that I really love. Let me know in the comments what books you read this month and which ones were your favorite, because I would love to know. And if you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos.